Welcome, everyone, for another episode, a rip-roaring episode, I hope, of Mondays with Mundy. And that's me, Jim Mundy, the historian for the Union League Legacy Foundation at the Union League of Philadelphia. We've been doing some serious history lately, and this time we're going to have a little bit more fun, I think. So I'm calling this episode America's First Selfie. That gives you any indication of where we're going. And yes, it does involve a Union League member. So we're going to go back in time. There's a surprise, isn't it? All the way back to October of 1839. So let's get started, all right? So I need to share my screen. All right. And I do share. And then I've got to wait for, okay. Come on. Jeez. All right. Slideshow from the beginning. I'm always surprised when this works. I don't know why. All right, here we are. America's First Selfie. Let's get started. And it involves this gentleman. You can see his name is Robert Cornelius, born in 1809, died in 1893. He lived a good life. Now, Robert Cornelius joined the Union League on March 17th of 1683. The League wasn't even 3 months old at that point in time. So clearly, Cornelius was jumping on the League bandwagon. Obviously, he was pro-Union, pro-Lincoln, pro-Constitution, pro-patriotic, and all that kind of really good stuff, because that's what the country needed at that point in time. So Cornelius, let's see a little bit about him. All right, his father, Christian, immigrated from Holland in 1783 to Philadelphia. He was a silversmith. And his son, apparently, inherited his father's scientific skills, if you will, because young Robert, who was educated privately in Philadelphia, seemed to specialize and find interest in chemistry and things like that. And keep in mind, too, that at this point in time, Philadelphia in the first half of the 19th century was a center of scientific research in America. And think of the American Philosophical Society, think of the Franklin Institute, for instance, and think of the universities that were here, the colleges that were here, and, teaching science, medical schools, all the same thing. So young Robert, who did apprentice in his father's lamp making company, all right, called Cornelius and Son. At that point in time, they're making lamps. But young Robert, though, was beginning to experiment with other kinds of chemicals because he'd heard about photography, which was just coming into being in France and England in the 1830s. And specifically in 1839, Louis Daguerre in France produced the first daguerreotype, which was a new way of taking photographs, if you will. Actually, and his first daguerreotype, I believe, was just in September of 1839. And news travels fast. And so young Robert was going to start experimenting with some stuff. And while he was doing that, there was another gentleman in Philadelphia who came in the story just because it helps build the story. And that, by the way, is the Cornelius and Baker manufacturer of, as you can see, lamps, chandeliers, and gas fixtures, gasoliers, all right? And that was at basically First and Sherry, all right? So here's Joseph Saxton. Saxton was from Huntington, Pennsylvania, a scientist. And at this point in time, he's in Philadelphia as the director of weights and measures for the U.S. Mint. And you can imagine that an assayer was incredibly important in coinage. And this is the U.S. Mint where he worked. It was located at Chestnut and Juniper. So that's Chestnut on the left-hand side and Juniper on the right-hand side. You can see City Hall over the top of the building itself. Today, that's where the Widener building is located. Okay, so that's where Saxton was working. And he wanted to take a photograph, but he needed help. He needed chemical help. There's a daguerreotype. I'm going to see what that is in just a minute. So a daguerreotype basically is a sheet of copper coated with silver, and then it is exposed to an iodine gas, and that creates a bond on the silver connected to the copper plate, from which, if you expose it to light, would create a photograph. And so here we have Central High School, which opened in October of 1838 on the east side of Juniper Street, just across the street from the U.S. Mint. And so Saxton asked Cornelius to help him create his photographic plates for daguerreotype, right? And Cornelius was perfectly capable of doing it, being a silver plate manufacturer himself. So he knew all about it. And so this is the photograph that was produced by Joseph Saxton on September the 25th of 1839. That's Central High School, right? That's the armory behind it. Okay, this is considered the first photograph taken in America, right? So again, Philadelphia is the center of scientific research, and this is what happens. So what do we have next? Here we have it. So Robert Cornelius decides if he can help Joseph Saxton, he can take his own photograph. So at the company office, which is approximately 8th and Market, Cornelius took a cigar box, as we understand it, an opera lens, right? Because they had opera glasses, right? And in that cigar box, he placed a copper plate that was covered with silver, pure silver, by the way, and then infused with iodine, later bromide. And this was just outside, apparently. Some accounts said it was inside, but most accounts said it was outside the building around 8th and Market. So Cornelius took the lens off the opera glass, went down, sat down for anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes. Imagine that. Arms crossed. You can see them crossed in the photograph, but you can see he moved his one arm just slightly, and that causes the blur. But he sat there for between 10 and 15 minutes to make sure that image was on that plate. And then he simply put the lens, or covered the lens back up again, and this is what he produced. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is, as you can see by his own indication, the first light picture ever taken of a human being in the United States. And it was in October, we believe around the October 16th, and you're watching this for the first time, at least on October the 12th. So 181 years ago, the first selfie in America was made in Philadelphia by a future league member named Robert Cornelius. Isn't that great stuff? And just think about today. Instagram, I believe there are over 100 million Instagram images uploaded around the world in a day, in one day. And so think what Cornelius was doing. So Cornelius would go on to, actually between 1841 and 1843, he opened up 2 photography studios. But as photography became more better established, both scientifically and in popular culture, he decided to give it up, and he spent the rest of his life working with his father's company, then called Cornelius & Son, and then later called Cornelius & Baker. And they would become the city's largest manufacturer of gasoliers, fixtures, and other kinds of bronzes and things like that. So that's Robert Cornelius. And what does Robert Cornelius look like today, you might ask? This is it. This is his grave at Laurel Hill Cemetery in the East Falls section of Philadelphia. So, and you can see somebody thought to, it's a relatively new tombstone from looks of it, but somebody thought to put an image of Cornelius on the stone itself. So I think it's in section J. So go to Laurel Hill. It's worth a visit. I used to take members there all the time. We haven't done it lately because it's really kind of like an underground Union League clubhouse in a way, if you will, because there are hundreds of members buried there, and all of them of the stature of Robert Cornelius. So I hope that hope you've enjoyed this little lighter than usual trip into the past. But I think it's fascinating that a Union League member would be the first American to take a selfie photograph, approximately October 16th of 1839. So there you have it. All right. So I hope you enjoyed it. All right. So thanks to the Legacy Foundation for providing these videos on a weekly basis. Thanks to all of you for watching, because if you don't watch, we wouldn't be doing this. We hope you're enjoying it. And if you ever have any questions about any of these episodes, please email me, please, at mundyj, it's MUNDYJ at unionleague.org, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. So I hope we see you next week. And in the meantime, stay well, stay safe. All right? Bye now.